everyone, hope you are good and be happy always. Once again, welcome to Shaji's Academy, and today we will discuss chapter 4 of Indian Economic Development of class 12 CBSE. It is your economic reform since 1991. It comprises of your new economic policy. With this new economic policy, India opened its economy for foreign investment. It started importing commodities from other nations. All the restrictions were removed. In fact, major restrictions were removed for the foreign companies to act in India. So it was a very significant decision. It was a milestone in your economic development of India. So let's start our topic. And what is liberalization? Today we will discuss liberalization. And what is that? Liberalization comes from the word liberal. That means go easy on something or relax the norms for something. Because India relaxed the norms for foreign companies and exports and imports, that's why it is known as liberalization. Okay, so why economic reforms? Government of India realized that the policy of growth for Indian economy between 1950 to 1990 did not lead to expected growth. See, when India embarked or started its economic development journey in 1950, it thought that the policy it is pursuing or following is best for India. It will lead to very good economic growth, but it did not happen. India faced economic crisis of foreign exchange in 1990s, and that is the thing that led India to adopt economic reforms. Then the system of control, quotas and production of domestic industry led to inefficiencies and stagnation. See, the system of control, that means public sector was given the key role to develop Indian economy. But when people are given many rights but no duties, there was, in fact, people were functioning in a public sector but they became inefficient. Right now also when people say we want a government job, why do they want a government job? Because it is easy going sometimes. I am not saying all the government jobs are very easy to go for, but in some jobs people just relax and they do not work. This exactly happened in many of the public sector enterprises of India. People did not work, they did not lead to any production, and that is the thing that led to sickening of many of the public sector industries, inefficiencies in them and lesser production in comparison to the inputs they consumed. Okay, so the system of quotas, controls, production for your own industries, import substitution, it did not lead to your economic growth, but economic inefficiencies and stagnation. Stagnation means not growing, or even if it is growing, but it is very marginal rate, very minimum rate, it's growing at a minimum rate. Okay, so the low level of GDP growth, then revision of economic policy was needed. Low level of economic growth and GDP growth means the public sector and the policies of government were not able to fasten the growth of your GDP, that is gross domestic product or annual turnover of goods and services in your economy. That means production was very less in your economy. Public sector was not producing significant amount of goods and services to fulfill the needs of Indian population. It happened that way, and that is why revision of economic policy was required. This led to adoption of new economic policy, NEP, that is the acronym for that, and LPG. LPG were the core policies which were adopted in your new economic policy. What is that? LPG stands for liberalization, privatization and globalization. Then, meaning of economic reforms. Economic reforms stand for a set of economic policies which aim to increase the speed of growth and development. These are a set of policies which in fact fasten the growth, increase the pace of growth of your economy. India adopted new economic policy and economic reforms of LPG to save Indian economy from crisis. Components of new economic policy. The policy of liberalization, L. It's abbreviated from L in place of licensing for industry and trade. Before adoption of new economic policy, India followed licensing. That means if you want to start any organization, you are a private individual, then you will have to obtain license from government officials. Take for example, you want to start a bakery, then you will have to ask for license from government officials. But if they deny, if they say no, we are not giving you license, then you won't be able to open your or start your bakery. This exactly happened for many of the individuals in India, private sector individuals in India, who did not get license for opening up their or starting their enterprises, and India could not grow. So licensing was not good for Indian economy then. The policy of privatization P in place of quotas. Before adoption of privatization in India, government fixed quotas for importing commodities from outside. Take for example, if we want food grains, then government would fix quota of 2000 kg of wheat to be imported to India. That means beyond that amount, no one could import wheat from other countries, or maybe import of machines. Take for example, we require 4000 machines to be installed in our factories. But if government imposes quota of only 200 machines, then we would be able to import only 200 machines into India, and only few companies will be able to install them in their plants or factories. So it was really bad for Indian companies to not get proper inputs to grow. Then the policy of globalization in place of permits. Before adoption of policy of globalization in India, India followed policy of permits. For example, whatever you required, maybe you require to expand your production in your factory. Suppose you have a bakery and you are producing 100 packets of bread per day. But if you want to produce 200 or 1000 packets of bread per day, then you will have to obtain a permit or a license. That is really not good, because you can't expand your business easily. What will happen? You will go to the babus or the clerks or the government officials to ask for permit, and if they deny, if they ask for bribe, or if they deny you permission, then you won't be able to expand or produce more amount of bread packets in your factory. That means you were restricted from growing your organization. So these type of permits were really bad for your organization, bad for economy, and you could not produce the required amount of commodities, goods and services in your economy owing to these licensing, quotas and permits. In place of licensing, quotas and permit, that means policy of L, Q and P, policy of LPG was initiated through your new economic policy. That means LPG replaced the policy of LPQ, licensing, permits and quotas. Clear? Then, economic reforms of 1991 are classified as stabilization measures, that is short-term measures to correct deficit imbalance of payments, BOP, and high inflation. Before adoption of LPG, India was fighting deficit imbalance of payments. At the time of adoption of new economic policy, India did not have sufficient funds to import even a week of inputs into India or its needs into India. We were not able to import anything from outside world. We had only a week worth of foreign exchange in our reserves. Okay, the structural reforms, long-term measures to improve efficiency of economy by increasing competition and opening Indian economy for foreign direct investment. Structural reforms. What is structural reforms? We have studied beforehand also. Structure comes from the word structure. That means structure of your economy. That means the reforms which would lead to changing in structure of your economy, that in more of the industries would be established, lesser dependence on agriculture would be there, and service sector would be allowed to grow in your economy. That was the motive of these structural reforms. So we had stabilization measures and structural reforms for long-term growth of your economy and increased competition of your Indian factories, for your Indian factories and industries. Why? Because if foreign companies will come to India, they will establish their companies and factories in India. What will happen? Our Indian companies will have to fight those foreign companies. This is just happening in India right now. our Indian companies are competing with MNCs in India, and the competition has increased, and in that competition your consumer is benefited. Okay, we are benefiting because consumer has become the king now. Beforehand, when private sector companies were not allowed to operate in India, or MNCs were not allowed to operate in India freely, we, the consumers, were really at loss because we did not get variety of goods and services. Prices were really high and inflation was really high in India, and consumer was not a king, he was in fact a slave. He had to consume whatever he was offered by public sector enterprises and limited number of private sector enterprises. So it was really bad for your consumer, and now consumer has become the king. Elements of economic reforms: liberalization, privatization, globalization, or policy of LPG. These are basically the elements of your economic reforms. Then what is liberalization? Today we will discuss liberalization in detail. It stands for freedom of firms from direct and physical control of government. As we explained earlier, government was following the policy of licensing, permits and quotas for private sector, and there was direct physical control over these firms. They had to obtain license for everything, they had to obtain permits for expanding their organization, expanding their production, or opening any new plant, installing any new machinery. Everything was done through them, and quotas really hampered the growth of your economy, because we were not able to import essential commodities or goods into our economy so that we could produce some new commodities or any raw material from abroad. Why? Because we had to protect our own industries, those are infant industries, and due to that our economy could not grow. But liberalization, that means liberal. The government became liberal, that means it relaxed the norms, it opened your economy for competition from other MNCs which came to India due to these reforms. Need for economic reforms in India: licensing, price control or financial controls, import controls, and restrictions on investment were causing problems for growth of businesses. So this was there was very urgent need for economic reforms in India. This was the cause for that. Then another cause was there were very high level of delays, inefficiency and corruption in India, because corruption was there. Whenever you wanted some license, permits, or you wanted your quotas to be sanctioned from government officials, they would demand bribe from you people. You had to grease their palms, you had to give every hefty amount of money so that they could provide you permits or licensing. So this was corruption that was leading to nepotism and bureaucracy in India. So it was leading to a lot of pressure on private sector and other sectors. There was low competition, low profits and low level of GDP. When there were no MNCs, there was no competition, and Indian companies were enjoying free meal, and they were giving whatever they wanted to consumers and charging very high prices. But it was also leading to low profits for these companies, because they could not improve their production, they were not having licenses to export to other nations, they could not do things without licenses. There was high cost economic system, as public enterprises were using lot of inputs but giving out very less output. Now public sector started developing or becoming a deadweight on your economic system. Why? Because they were consuming a lot of inputs of economy, raw material, a lot of raw material was consumed, a lot of skilled labor was consumed by them, and imported machines were used by them, but they were not producing optimum amount, or in fact the minimum amount of production that they could have produced. So they were becoming a dead weight, and that developed a high cost economic system in India. High cost means you are using lot of resources. For example, you are using 10,000 rupees worth of raw material for baking bread, but you are not producing worth even 5,000 worth of your bread packets. That means you are at loss, because you are investing 10,000 rupees in production of bread, but you are producing only bread worth rupees 5,000. That means you are wasting 5,000 rupees. That exactly happened in case of your public sector. There was restriction on free play of market forces and profit maximization. That means private sector was not allowed, it was not free to operate as per the free play of market forces. That means the things which were in demand they could not produce. For example, there were delays in delivery of items like scooters, bikes, cars, etc. People had to wait for 2-3 months to get their bikes or cars. But right now, when there is competition, when there are so many industries, then when there are so many companies acting in India, operating in India, you can get a bike, you go to market and purchase a bike or purchase a car. It is freely available now because now India has adopted policy of liberalization. Then, economic reforms under liberalization or industrial sector reforms. India followed the example of other developing nations like Korea, Thailand and Singapore. See, these were also the developing nations which were facing same type of problem, and India also wanted to develop like them, and that's why they adopted policy of economic reforms, abolition of industrial licensing. The thing what was done was all industrial licensing was abolished because licenses were the impediments or the hurdles in the growth of your economic system, so they were abolished. Licensing was abolished for all items. It was imposed only on 5 industries. That means 5 industries were exempted, which were the liquor, cigarette, defense equipments, industrial explosives and dangerous chemicals, because these were the hazardous things and private sector could not have handled them nicely, and that's why licenses were imposed on them. Otherwise, all the other commodities or all the other items were freed or they were relaxed or abolished. Licensing was abolished on them. Suppose if you wanted to produce bread, you can produce bread of any quantity. There was no restrictions. Licenses were abolished. Now you can open bakery. You don't have to take a license from anyone. Contraction of public sector. Now, NEP reduced industries under public sector from 17 to 8 in number. Previously, there were 17 industries which were reserved for operation, which were reserved to be operated by public sector. But thereafter, only 8 companies remained or industries remained under public sector. Thereafter, in 2010-11, the number of industries were further reduced to only 3, which are atomic energy, railways and defense equipments. I have made acronym for that, abbreviation, that is ARD. ARD means atomic energy, railways and defense equipments are now reserved for public sector. Otherwise, all other industries have been freed from any type of licenses or public sector control. Economic reforms under liberalization. There were policies pertaining to de-reservation of production areas. Many industries reserved only for SSI were de-reserved and market forces were made free to operate. How market forces are free to operate? See, there was no licensing now, there was no permits now, and there were no quotas. And market forces like demand, supply and prices could operate freely. For example, if prices of tomatoes are increasing right now, people can grow tomatoes. In the same manner, if prices of laptops increases really very high or some other commodities increases, then people can produce more of that commodity. That is free flow of market forces, a free operation of market forces. Why? Prices of something are increasing, then people will produce them more and sell them more and earn more profits. That is the main thing over here. So demand and supply adjusts itself on its own. There is no regulation, there is no control of government in this matter. So that is free play of market forces. Now, all were allowed to operate according to free play, as some of the industries were only reserved to be operated by small scale industries. But small scale industries are not able to produce large scale production to cater to the demands of whole economy, like a big economy like India. So many of the industries were de-reserved. That means they were not exclusively to be produced by SSI only. These commodities could be produced by large scale sector also, because large scale sector are bigger industries. They can go for production of large scale production of goods and services, and they can fulfill the needs of large number of people or a very vast majority of population of India. So large scale industries were also promoted for private sector, and SSI could not control them anymore. Then expansion of production capacity, license on capacity of production and expansion were removed. Okay, now there were no licenses for production of any commodity. If you wanted to produce any commodity, you could produce it. For example, if you want to produce bottles, like just like Milton bottles or cameras, etc., you can produce now. You don't need to obtain any licenses. And expansion were removed. For example, if you are producing 1000 units or quantity, 1000 number of cameras in 1 year, and if you want to produce 2000 number of cameras in 1 year, then you can expand your production. You can, that means increase your production without any licenses or permits. So all these type of restrictions were removed on private sector. Then freedom to import capital goods. No permission was needed for import of capital goods and for entering into international agreements. Previously, private firms could not enter into international agreements. That means if I belong to India, I am a business woman over here and I want to do an agreement, enter an agreement with a business from Korea or America. Then previously I was not free to do so, but now I can enter into an agreement with those companies also, and we can work in collaboration jointly with each other in India or in other countries also. So I am free. All the public sector enterprises are now free to enter into international agreements with other nations and other companies from all across all the countries. Done. We can import capital goods also. Previously we could not import machines as per our will. If we wanted 10 machines, we were allowed to only import 2 machines only. Then what happened? We were falling deficit of machines and we could not expand our production, we could not scale up our production, and we could not increase the capacity of production of our company. So that was detrimental to the growth of our economy. Then financial sector reforms. Banking and non-banking financial institutions. What does it include? Banking and non-banking. Banking is all the types of banks, and non-banking are just like LIC, etc. These are non-banking financial institutions because you can't deposit money over there. You can only purchase policies from these institutions. The stock exchange market is there in your financial sector reforms. Foreign exchange markets are there. Then in India, financial sector is regulated and controlled by Reserve Bank of India. Here, all the financial sector reforms, all these institutions are controlled by whom? By Apex Bank of India. Which is the Apex Bank of India? Reserve Bank of India. So, RBI is the custodian or controller of or the guardian of all the financial sector in your economy. Then RBI shifted from regulator to facilitator. Previously, RBI used to control all these institutions. It was having a strict control over them. None of them could enter into financial agreements with other companies or other nations, or they could not act freely. But now, RBI became only a facilitator. It did not regulate now after new economic policies. Control was replaced by competition. Now, when new economic policy was adopted in 1991. All the control was replaced by competition. What does it mean? Now, after 1991, private sector companies were allowed to enter into India. For example, before 1991, LIC, Life Insurance Corporation of India, was the sole player in your insurance sector of India, life insurance sector. But after 1991, many companies were allowed to open life insurance business in India, and LIC faced competition, stiff competition after that period. That is 1991 economic reforms. So now we have many companies from which we can purchase life insurance policy, and now LIC is not the sole player in your Indian economy. That means it is facing competition in the same manner. Private sector banks like your Axis Bank, ICICI Bank, and many other banks are operating in India right now, and they are giving stiff competition to the public sector banks of India. So competition has increased due to these reforms. Then changes in Indian financial sector, emergence of private bankers at domestic and international level in Indian banking industry. Then liberalization has allowed FII, that is foreign institutional investment, to invest in Indian financial markets. What is that? FII. You understand FDI? That is foreign direct investment. Now it is FII. Foreign direct investment means a company opens or starts any business in India, a foreign company. Just take for example a foreign company of America. A company of America invests in India directly and it opens or starts a firm in India, a factory in India, production capacity in India. That is foreign direct investment. But in FII, what happens? They invest in your stock market, financial market. They purchase equity in some firm. That means there is flow of money only. They do not open any production capacity, production unit in India. Okay, no factory, nothing at all. They don't produce anything, but they just invest in your equities and earn profits. Foreign institutional investment was raised to around 74%. Previously, foreign institutional investment, that is FII, was not allowed in India, but now after 1991, its limit was raised to 74%. Then merchant bankers, mutual funds and pension funds were allowed to set up branches. Foreign companies and the merchant bankers of international, that means all the other nations, were allowed to open up branches over here. Now these financial sector reforms have led to growth of the Indian financial sector. So Indian financial sector is really growing really high time and it's growing very swiftly and contributing to the growth of India. In order to improve your financial sector further, Indian government adopted demonetization of Indian currency. What is demonetization? Please try to understand. It is just ending up or discontinuing the old currency which is in circulation in any economy and issuing new currency in place of that. It just happened in India. It was adopted on 8th November 2016. See here, please add 6 over here. It is 2016, not 201. Okay, to fight black money and underground economy in India. Then it is a policy of withdrawing existing currency notes, that is legal tender in your economy, and replace it with new currency. For example, in India, notes of rupees 500 and rupees 1000 were withdrawn and replaced by new notes of rupees 500 and rupees 2000. So we all know that it happened in your time also. So you all know that. Then purpose of demonetization: stop illegal transaction for illegal or anti-social activities, black money and underground economy. See, many terrorist attacks happen in India. So stop these attacks. So why these attacks happen? Because these underground economies supply money to these terrorists. And so to end these terrorist activities, anti-social activities going on in the economy of India, government decided to put an end to this black money and black market and it demonetized your old currency. Principal merits of demonetization: it helps unearth black money, reduction of shadow economy or economy of unrecorded production. People do not pay taxes on them actually. Then financial sector of country expands, stops funding of terrorist attacks, people shifted to digital mode which increased financial inclusion. So this is the most important advantage of your demonetization. What happened when people faced cash crunch? They did not have cash crunch in their pockets. They shifted to digital money, okay, digital wallets, and that increased your financial inclusion in your economy. The principal demerits of demonetization: it led to chaos and disturbed life of people. People were stranded on roads, they could not find cash, and many people died in hospitals also. There were large number of queues like long snakes in front of ATMs, and people, really the life of people became really hard and worse. That there was cash crunch, people lost their jobs, there was slowdown in economy, there were large scale layoffs, that means terminations of people, that means job losses of casual workers in informal sector. Informal sector is a sector which is not registered, just like small shops, pan thelas, small vendors, etc., and shops having casual labor. Casual labor is a labor which functions on your daily wages. Just like you give 200 rupees to a person and ask him to dig a hole or in your backyard, or to plant your trees, that is your casual labor. It does not have a permanent job. It is not skilled. In fact, so lot many casual labor lost their jobs during demonetization. Terms to know for taxes. What is the fiscal policy? Here, it is a policy of revenue and expenditure of government. See, government needs to spend on many of expenditures or many works which are going for infrastructure development, for development of hospitals, building roads, building hospitals for people, poor people, running PDS shops, that is public distribution system, providing subsidies to poor people on cylinders, on diesel, petrol, etc. It needs very large amount of money. So for that it needs revenue also, and it gets revenue from taxes. Okay, then tax reforms, they are important components or part of fiscal policy of the government. Then revenue, it is collected by collecting direct and indirect taxes. Expenditure, then what accounts for expenditure of government is your infrastructure building, just like roads, canals, bridges, etc., flyovers. Then administrative expenditures like police, on IAS officers, on maintenance of all these offices, etc. Then defense expenditures, that safeguarding your borders. If India enters into a fight or war with Pakistan or any other nation, those expenditures for defense equipment and aircraft purchase, etc., are met by government only. Subsidies, pensions, etc., are also important components of expenditure of your government. Direct and indirect taxes. What is a direct tax and what is indirect tax? See, very clear-cut discrimination is there. Direct taxes are taxes which are imposed on your income, just like income tax, and indirect taxes are imposed or just like imposed on your goods and services. When you go to a sweet shop, you purchase some sweets and you pay GST right now, nowadays. So that is your indirect tax. You pay it indirectly, not through your income. It's not an income tax. Okay. So direct taxes, they are the taxes whose burden cannot be shifted on others. For example, income tax, corporation tax is paid by businesses, and wealth tax, that is on your wealth. People have to pay taxes by themselves when direct taxes are levied on them. See, if income tax is levied on me, I'll have to pay it. If wealth tax is levied on me because it is on my wealth, I'll have to pay it. If corporation tax is to be paid on my business, so I'll have to pay it. I can't shift the burden on any consumer. Okay. Then indirect taxes, they are the taxes whose burden can be shifted on others. Suppose I have a business of producing breads and biscuits. I produce biscuits and breads in my factory. Government imposes tax on me. So what I will do, I will add those taxes in the price of my bread and biscuit, and I will sell them to you. Then who will ultimately pay the taxes? You are the taxpayer. I am not the taxpayer, right? So I have shifted my burden on you people. I am not paying those taxes. Though I have paid those taxes, but I have included those taxes in your price of bread. So you are the consumers and you are the ultimately the payers of that tax. That's why it is known as indirect tax. Though I have paid it, but I have shifted the burden on you people. Example, GST, goods and services tax, customs duty, etc. are your indirect taxes. Producers who pay taxes add it in price of goods and services and shifts it in on customers. That is your indirect tax. Problems in taxes before liberalization. Taxes were very high. Taxes structure was complex. High and complex taxes led to tax evasion. There was loss of revenue for government. So these were the problems of taxes. Then changes in tax reforms after liberalization. Taxes have become simpler. Now it is really very simple to understand GST or income taxes. Then rates for corporate and income taxes have been reduced. In 2016, Indian Parliament passed Goods and Services Tax (GST) to introduce unified indirect tax system in India. So why GST were imposed or enacted? To provide a unified indirect tax system to India. That means one nation, one type of tax. GST came into effect in July 2017. They were imposed in fact, and people had to pay GST in 2000. It started payment in 2017 July. GST has raised tax compliance and increased revenue for government. It is important over here. Previously, taxes were not simple, they were really very complex, they were really very high. So people tried to avoid paying taxes, but now when taxes became simpler, their rates were reduced, now people are paying more taxes. That means compliance has increased, and that has increased the revenue of your government. Need for foreign exchange reforms. Why they were needed at all? See, before that, we were having BOP crisis in India. That's why they were needed. Then devaluation was the first step in 1991. Devaluation means reducing the value of your currency. Why? Because when you reduce the value of your currency, your things become cheaper. That means people from UK, America, etc. will be attracted towards purchasing your commodities, because now they can purchase more commodities from India in lesser amount of dollars, because their dollar has become expensive, and when something becomes expensive, it can purchase more goods and services in any other country. So when we devalued the currency, they got more rupees worth of items from India, and that's why our exports increased. So that was the trick by the government of India. It reduced the value of its currency and increased its exports from India to other nations. This was a big step in external sector reforms and led to increase in exports, more inflow of foreign currency in India. So it was immediately a major development in your Indian financial sector. Then GST, Goods and Services Tax, has been imposed for uniform tax structure across India, as it is one tax in place of all indirect taxes for goods and services. Now you have to pay only one indirect tax. Previously there were so many types of indirect taxes which were imposed on goods and services in India, and people usually got confused and they were not complying with payment of taxes. The slogan of GST, one tax, one nation, one market. Then basic structure of GST is, here category of goods are given and tax rates are given. You can see over here sanitary napkins, fortified milk, that means vitamin D etc. and minerals are added into that milk. Fresh fruits and vegetables, they attract only 0%. That means no tax have to be paid on purchase of these items. When you purchase vegetables, you pay no taxes, no tax on fresh fruits, no tax on fortified milk and sanitary napkins. Why? Because these things are important for your poor people and they attract no taxes. Then coffee, tea, spices, electric vehicles, etc. When you purchase these items, coffee, tea, spices, etc., you have to pay only 5% of taxes. Then butter, frozen meat products, Ayurvedic medicines, etc. Spectacles, they have to pay 12% of taxes. When you purchase these items, you have to pay 12% of tax. When you purchase pasta, pastries, cake, detergents, you have to pay 18% of taxes. And when you purchase automobiles, dishwashers and vending machines, you have to pay 20% of taxes. You can see over here, as you become richer and richer, you have to pay more taxes. That means these taxes are progressive. Okay. Typical characteristics of GST. GST is levied at each stage of value addition. Take for example, you are a producer, you are making breads in your company. Okay. So when you will that means when you will sell your commodities to any consumer, so consumer will have to pay those taxes. For example, when you purchase wheat from farmer for production of your bread, you had to pay taxes to the government. And now when anyone will purchase your bread, he will have to pay taxes, and you can get rebate on your taxes also. It focuses on supply of goods, not production. It just focuses on supply because consumers have to pay taxes. Tax is levied when goods leave destination for their buyers. That means if I have to purchase a scooter, I will be paying taxes. GST paid by the producers on the purchase of inputs is allowed to be adjusted by the producers in their payment of GST proceeds to the government. So now when, see, I have a factory, if I make scooters in my factory, I have to purchase some raw material, so I'll be paying taxes at that point of time. But when I'll be selling my scooters, anyone who will be purchasing my scooters will have to pay tax. For example, it is very simple. When you go to some garment shop, any branded garment shop, you purchase clothes and you pay taxes. It is very simple. That means it is destination tax. When goods are supplied to some other party, you have to pay taxes. Principal merits of GST. It is a simple and unified tax for whole country. It is very simple tax and unified for whole country. Refund of GST on imports is available to producers only when they buy goods from registered suppliers. This is very important over here. So you will be provided a rebate on your payment of taxes if you are a producer only when you purchase your inputs or raw material or any other type of thing from registered supplier. That means it is giving rise to transparent economy, and black money will end very soon in this manner. It increases transparency in business, black market is reduced, uniform tax increases the market size for producers, GST has raised government revenue. These two are very important. Uniform tax increases the market size of producers. Why? Because there is one nation and one type of tax, one rate of tax. That means if I am staying in Uttar Pradesh or if I stay in Delhi, if I am producing any commodity, then I can sell in any part of India. Previously, there were different taxes for state governments and central government, and all the different states had different types of taxes. So we were not free to operate in other nations, sell our commodities in other nations. So that has increased the reach of producers, and now government is earning or getting more revenue from payment of taxes. Then demerits of GST, main teething problems. Teething problems means when you start something, just like a kid, when its teeth come out, then what happens? It has many problems. It can have vomiting, it can suffer from diarrhea, anything like that, or fever also. In the same manner, we are having many problems in the imposition of GST, because it's the initial phase of imposition of GST. What are they? GST is yet to cover all goods in India. All the goods are not covered by GST right now in India, so it's going to happen in a couple of years. For example, electricity generation, alcohol, petrol and diesel are out of GST regime right now. They are yet to be included in your GST regime. Then GST taxes for different goods and services are not finally settled, which creates confusion. There happens some confusion in your GST rates which are not imposed in uniform manner. What is devaluation? We explained previously also, that is devaluating your currency levels and lowering or decreasing the value of your currency to increase exports. Okay. Now, objectives of devaluation. Devaluation is done to increase exports and decrease imports. Now, if your things become cheaper, people will be attracted towards your commodities and they will buy more. That means you will increase exports. Trade and investment policy reforms. It impacts your trade and policy reforms. Then it aimed at increasing competitiveness of Indian industries. Why? Because when your goods are qualitative and they are cheaper also, they become competitive. Because as a consumer, you will want to purchase a commodity which is qualitative. That means it is having good quality, it is of good type, it is having good texture, good functionality, and good life duration, good shelf life. That is good for you. Then it should be available at cheaper prices also. Prices should be low. That means it is a good package for a consumer, and in that manner people will purchase more. Okay, it increases, that means it increases competitiveness of your commodities. Then it induced foreign direct investment and foreign institutional investment in Indian economy. So now people felt that when you produce in India, you can sell more to other nations, and that's why people from other nations across the world, they wanted to invest in India in FDI, that means directly investing in factories and firms, establishing factories and firms in India, and by investing in equities in different industries of India. Helps in bringing efficient foreign technology in India. Forms of trade and investment policy reforms. Dismantling quantitative restrictions on imports and exports. All the quantitative restrictions, that means import quotas, were abolished. Reduction in tariff rates. There were reduction in tariff rates. That means previously if you wanted to import or export, you had to pay high amount of taxes, but it was not so now. Removal of import licensing. There was no licensing for import of commodities or any type of raw material into India or machines. Remove export duties. If you wanted to export, you had to pay no taxes. Salient features of trade and policy after liberalization. Import quotas were abolished. We explained it earlier. Import licensing. Extra for hazardous goods was abolished. Reduction of import duties to enhance competitiveness in the domestic areas. Export duty was withdrawn to make Indian goods price competitive. So it is a gist of all the things which were improved. Then Liberalization and laissez-faire system. Liberalization is not laissez-faire. Laissez-faire is complete freedom of market forces and the decision to allocation of resources, production and distribution of resources purely lies in the hands of private individuals, and government is just a watchdog to maintain law and order. Just like in America it happens over there, that all the market forces are really free over there. When in any economy market forces act freely, that means if price of any commodity increases, all the producers try to manufacture that commodity. For example, if prices of branded clothes are increasing day by day in all the nations, so people are just concentrating on production of branded clothes and branded commodities, and they are not concentrating on production of goods for poor people. That is your laissez-faire type of a thing. But purely laissez-faire economies do not exist nowadays. It is a condition which is idealistic and does not happen in real life. Whereas liberalization means a condition wherein government allows greater degree of freedom and flexibility to private entrepreneurs. Just like happening in India, we are providing greater degree of freedom. Market forces are free, but yet they are regulated. There is still some control over market forces. You can't go on increasing the inflation of some commodity. You can't hold some commodity in India. There are certain regulations that are imposed on your private sector and private entrepreneurs. In the matters relating to allocation of resources, it does not mean complete freedom and non-existence of government control. So here government control exists, but in laissez-faire policy there is no government control and all the market forces are free to operate. Then thank you so much. So this is all about your part 1, that is liberalization in your economy. We will be discussing other portions just like privatization and globalization in our next part. Thank you so much. Take care. God bless you and study hard for your exams and for your better future, because see, studying is not something for bugging up for your exams and getting good marks. It is a lifelong process. It's a lifelong learning. So whenever you study anything, study it wholeheartedly and then study for your self-improvement and knowledge gaining purposes, and not just for mugging up, rectification type of a thing. Thank you so much. Take care. God bless you.